All right, so the recording has begun at 7:36 p.m. So we do have on our agenda, I'm actually going to copy and paste our agenda into the chat box so that everybody can see it here and see what our discussion items are today. So Monica, first thing that we need to do is do our declaration of electronic meeting, and I do have that in front of me. Would you like me to read that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So just as background, Chapter 1283 of the Virginia 2020 Acts of Assembly addresses the ability of soil and water conservation districts to hold electronic meetings without the need for quorum being present in a single location when a state of emergency has been declared pursuant to Section 44-146, subsection 17 of the Code of Virginia. So we just need to acknowledge or move that the Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District's Board of Directors has determined that the nature of the declared COVID-19 virus emergency makes it impractical or unsafe for us to assemble in a single location for the purpose of transacting business statutorily required or necessary for us to continue operations and discharge our lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. So I think we just need to accept those, Monica.
I move to accept them.
Okay, I'll second.
Sorry, apologize for the drinking while. The 7:30 is a hard start time for me after starting a new job. My brain is a little fuzzy.
Well, no worries, Monica. We'll work through this together.
I appreciate it.
So I think we're good to go for the declaration. We do have the minutes from the February 4th committee meeting,
yes.
as well. And again, I want to thank Heather for working hard. She's been joining us at these meetings and did a great job of capturing our discussion. So those were shared prior to the meeting. Do you have any adjustments that you want to make, Monica?
I didn't see any, and I have to say that when I read through them, the fact that, Heather, that you capture all that is just, amazing. So I do appreciate it because we did cover quite a bit, and then sometimes when you're having the conversation, you don't realize, the breadth of like the details, right? And so thank you, because a phenomenal capture of conversation and even kind of where we wanted to go, right? So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I appreciate having Heather here too, to help with that, because it can be tough to participate in the conversation and capture minutes. But Heather also, as we discussed at the last meeting, Heather also is involved in much of the personnel aspects of the work that we do too, whether it's supporting onboarding or whether it's helping with forms and things like that. So her perspective is really important to have here as well. So. We just have to make sure that we pull her out of the minutes, out of typing the minutes as well. Okay. So there were a couple of things, Monica, out of the draft authorities and responsibilities that we discussed last time that I remember you wanted to take maybe a little bit of time to kind of think about. And do you have anything that you wanted to add or adjust to it?
So what I'm thinking is, because I may tweak a word and send it to you, and okay. I don't think I'm not sure if it warrants a discussion or if it's just wordsmithing.
It may just be wordsmithing.
And I think it's more of wordsmithing. And so I think if we highlight the section, so when we present it to the board, we can just, the full board, we can state, this is, if need be. I don't know if we need to highlight it, but just say this was wordsmithed a little to capture because in full honesty, I still have to wrap my head how I prefer to say it, but I think it needs to be, I don't know if it necessitates a deep dive discussion since it's wordsmithing, but it can be presented. And if someone else has a better way, then, and we can provide it to the board, obviously prior to, so they have, a few days to digest it and
Right, absolutely. And I think I just wanted to point out, I was trying to go back and take a look at where that was. I know I'm pretty sure we captured it in the notes, and it may be in the presentation section. Let me go back to the presentation here. Oh, the one that we revised. If you give me a moment, I'll share my screen here, Monica, just so that I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
So I believe it was this section in particular. I think it was this one that we were talking about in particular.
Yeah.
That you just wanted to wordsmith a little bit. But there may be other aspects of this too, Monica. So if you want to provide those to me, that would be completely fine. And if you want to just mark up the version, this was the other one. This was the Word document that we sent out with the various things. So it was this one here. That you had mentioned in particular. But anyway,
can you just I mean, I know that we have talked about it, but would you mind just sending me the highlighted parts on the, or is it, it's already captured in that because it's the Google?
It is captured in this. This was copy and pasted straight from the PowerPoint, but if you would like me to just put in the highlighted areas, essentially what
Yeah,
we
that would
reviewed.
be very helpful only for purposes of my organizational, like what I need to address. And sometimes it escapes you when you're in there. And so the highlighted portion is just, I had it in my notes, but I'm a visual person.
I get it. I get it.
You don't want to see how many colored pens I have.
Not a problem, Monica. I
appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll make those. I'll probably do it in orange because that's my favorite color to mark things up with. But I will do that, and I will send that your way so that you can take a look at it.
Yeah, because again, like we mentioned, I think that's a wordsmithing, and no matter what, we'll be bringing it to full board. And so when we present it, then there can be discussion if need be as to that part.
Sounds good. Okay. Do you have anything else, Monica, that you want to discuss in regards to the last meeting in the authority section?
I think we just talked about, like, I'm reviewing the equal employment opportunity because there is going to be that update.
Yes.
And that's really important to me from the DEI perspective, and making sure that language is up to date because of the concentration of focus from the county's perspective. But it's going to also, I think, as we see, I think you're going to have to think, not you, but like all of us, workforce issues, DEI, opportunities that may come with, if we see kind of an increase in dollars coming towards the state for climate change issues or anything like that, we may see in the next few years opportunities that weren't there before. There may be an influx, maybe. I'm not saying there will be, but I think we really need to be prepared to be able to integrate some of these priorities that come from the DEI and climate change and be able to speak to them. I think Audubon Natural Society has done probably the leader from a conservation perspective, and that kind of DEI visionary in embracing it and really kind of bringing it to, and I think that we can do that too. And I think it would be greatly appreciated by the commissioner, right?
Yeah,
Our county executive.
Oh, the counties, yeah. I think absolutely. We've incorporated a lot to tie in with the One Fairfax initiatives and things like that. So a lot of the work that we've done on VCAP, for example, in targeting areas not just for the water quality benefit, but those that would also provide a socioeconomic support some of the socioeconomic more depressed areas in the county as well, where we know that there is some overlap with the need for some enhanced conservation services, but also, you know, a community that's also in need for a wide variety of different reasons. And so there is absolutely more concerted effort, but I think that's a great idea and maybe one that we need to really think about how we incorporate that essence into our strategic plan as well, so that we do have some of that time set aside, or at least even if it's to say that it's our ambition to look at things from a DEI perspective.
Yeah.
Actually, we call it JEDI now.
Oh, really?
Justice.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's
equality, diversity, and inclusion. So, and then Willie's participation on the Virginia Association of Conservation Districts Employees, DEI, is also lending some great perspective in terms of what's happening with other districts across the Commonwealth. So I think you're right. I did take a look at our equal opportunity policy that we have in our policy document right now, and I would agree that it needs to be updated based upon some more current language.
okay.
So it's a very similar statement that we make.
Yeah.
And so to like what the state association has in their policy. So it really,
which they just updated too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So if for purposes of presenting it to the board, are we going to have that kind of, do you think we'll have that updated, or do we need to work on that? Or would you like?
I think, where did I have that kind of in?
Is that later?
It is in our, actually it has to do with, it really does have to do with our standards of conduct, and you'll see it in there that, you know, we're not discriminating, if you will, but to also have the separate policy. So just to let you know, we advertise this, you know, on our website when we're on our career opportunities page and things like that. We advertise this and put that information out there in a wide variety of different locations. So if there's more specifics on that, then we might need to revisit the policy itself. But if it's to just make a statement that we're holding ourselves accountable to this, you know, equal opportunity through our standards of conduct, then we can take a look there. Maybe that becomes the model for this adjustment. Does that make sense? Sorry, you can't see my motions, but I'm pointing to the policy document right here. But so maybe we can take a look at it today as part of our standards of conduct, and then see if we need to make some modifications to this policy as well.
Thank you.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me save this real quick. And I'll close that. Okay. So Monica, are you ready to jump into Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct?
I am so ready to jump into Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct.
Okay. So I did send you a Word document of the Standards of Conduct and the Code of Ethics. So we can track along with it on this PowerPoint that I have, but you've got it in a Word format there as well. So what I can do is I can make modifications just like we did last time to the PowerPoint presentation, copy and paste it into a Word document, and then share it for review as well. And I do have two, since we're talking about two different topics, the Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct, and then our leave policies today. I've got two PowerPoints to share with you.
Did I get two? For some reason, I think I only pulled up one. Maybe
you have one PowerPoint, and then the other one is the Word documents.
Ah, got it.
So let me share my screen again, and we will jump in here with the
Ethics.
Code of Ethics. And try and pull you up so you're in the corner of my screen here so I can see folks. So our Code of Ethics, so just as we talked the last meeting, we have followed Fairfax County's policies. Our policy essentially has said that we follow Fairfax County's policies. And so what they have had really has served as sort of a foundation for us for a lot of different things. And we've made slight modifications along the way just based upon the needs of our organization, the size of our organization. So the Code of Ethics that you have in front of you in terms of the Word document, what I'm going to share with you, was greatly borrowed from Fairfax County. Sometimes we don't need to necessarily recreate the wheel, but it is absolutely was reviewed by staff. And some modifications were made. This was reviewed back over a year ago, and some modifications were made in order to kind of reflect some of the cultural items that we hold dear as well as team members. And so the Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct here again really are intended to apply to those that are employed or volunteer for or intern with us. And so you're going to see that it is very much focused on that from that angle. So we have a little bit of an introduction statement that is, really kind of talks about why we have our Code of Ethics, what it's intended to do, that it really helps to set our workplace culture, if you will. And then essentially it just it helps to guide employees with understanding just how we operate. What are our core principles, if you will? What are the things that we hold dear in terms of ensuring that we're providing the best services that we can to Fairfax County? So these definitely, all employees are still intended to hold the Constitution, our laws, our legal regulations, the policies and everything that we have nationally, statewide, and then locally as well. So our Code of Ethics, and I apologize that this is a little bit small. Can you all see this okay? I can actually turn it up as let me make it a little bit bigger here.
Yeah, I'm reading the Word documents.
Okay, I will, let's see here. So our Code of Ethics really focuses and is central around sort of these 6 core principles of honesty, the public service, respect, responsibility, stewardship, and trust. These are, again, all things that we recognize are really integral to ensuring the kind of team environment that we have internally, and then also externally how we present ourselves to the public as staff of the Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District. They are also just, some seem a little bit aspirational, if you will, or inspirational, and that's really what the intent of this is to be, is we want folks to really, again, be inspired by the kind of workplace that we are. So it includes everything from, again, honesty, being truthful in all of our endeavors, being honest and forthright with each other and with the general public. So we kind of look at that from the idea of making sure that we have the information stick to the facts, and try not to embellish. We don't embellish, but certainly sticking to the facts. Our public service, recognizing that we are government employees and that we are service oriented in the work that we do, and that our customers include Fairfax County government, but also the residents of Fairfax County, and maintaining that recognition again that that the work that we do is within the best interest of the residents of Fairfax County, and that we're working to really improve the quality of life as well. Respect. This gets a little bit into the equal opportunity, certainly, but treating all individuals with dignity, being fair and impartial, affirming the value of diversity in the workplace and in our geographical areas in which we serve as well. That was something that we did add as well. But appreciating the uniqueness of each individual and assuming positive intent. That's something really important that we all strive for as well, that we're all working to make the district the best place it can be, make Fairfax County the best place it can be. Creating a work environment that enables all individuals to perform to the best of their abilities and making time for each other by lending a hand. We recognize that no task is necessarily beneath any of us, and we recognize that the value of each other's time. Responsibility, again, taking responsibilities for actions, holding oneself accountable, if you will, working the full day, conducting all workplace actions with impartiality and fairness, reporting concerns in the workplace, so on and so forth, as you can see here. Seeking clarification when in doubt and ensuring that all decisions are unbiased. And then we also added that, it's important to learn from our failures as well. Celebrate those successes, learn from the failures, as we like to say. Stewardship, exercising financial discipline with our assets and resources, making accurate, clear, and timely disclosures to the public as necessary. Maintain accurate and complete records, demonstrate commitment to protecting our entrusted resources, and conducting the best possible work and providing the best possible product. Trust is building a regard for one another through teamwork and open communication, developing confidence with the public by fulfilling commitments and delivering on promises, understanding the boundaries and limitations of yourself and others, help each other to grow by providing feedback and being open to receiving it, and being curious and not critical. So these are, again, our code of ethics with a little bit of seasoning added to them as well. But is there anything that you see, again, that you feel needs further clarification or?
I think I've just seen responsibility worded differently in different places. And so, I think like things like work a full day is less, to me, again, we're going into some wordsmithing here, not so much of an issue. So let me clarify. There's not an issue that's outstanding that I feel is incorrect. It's just more consideration of, a responsibility and versus a standard conduct versus an ethical space, right? Working a full day to me, for example, isn't necessarily an ethical issue. There's a lot of things that might come up that might be not, I think I may take a highlight space here and just look at some other examples of responsibilities that I've seen in different, and see if there's just a possibility of capturing what this says, but maybe slightly different to consider. But that's my only, because when I look at that, there's a few things on there, especially having been through recently some trainings at the sanitation department, which actually has a very different perspective when you're on certain, it's interesting when you work in different places, how things are interpreted and how personnel are trained in responding to certain situations and what their responsibility is and what, for example, their leader's responsibility. And so it can sometimes confusing for a new employee, right? And I think just ensuring that we're holistically looking at who's coming into as a new employee, what their background is, what there may have been of their previous experience, and seeing like, well, this responsibility. And again, some people just glaze over these things. It's not like, staff are intimately reading every word and into the code of conduct or into the ethics. But I think that, to make sure that it's outlined. So should something arise, it's easy to say, well, this is what we meant, if that makes sense.
And And you know, Monica, it's important to kind of keep in mind the our employees, right? And you're right, because there's a wide range, and we have a wide range within our own organization. So again, these code of ethics apply to our interns, they apply to, you know, volunteers who may be working, you know, spending their summer with us. It applies to our employees. They may be in college, or they may be recently retired. And so there's a wide variety of different experiences associated with the employees that we have as well. So I tend to, this is definitely an important component, just like you said, you know, of an orientation process for new employees to understand what's expected of them and what it means to work within the organization, and what we hold dear and important to us. And so I look forward to your thoughts. There's definitely a little bit of an overlap between this and some of the standards of conduct. And I think you're right, the work a full day it gets to the responsibility, and it's kind of the accountability side of things, if you will, of the, you know, the idea is you're not going to be skipping out, you know, that the response.
Absolutely. And again, I agree with the premise. It's just, I think maybe a fresh pair of eyes sometimes looks at this and it stands out. And it's like, well, maybe there's just a slightly better way to, not better, but just a different way. And I think out of all of these, sometimes the responsibility is so, it holds so much, you know, it has so much weight to it in place that some of these others are kind of, it's similar to public service, but it's got the most weight in this area. So just to make sure it's reflected in a way that can be for new staff coming on board, or for staff that you're communicating with or whatnot, just ensuring that that's something they're in tune with from an ethical perspective. And also, I mean, I think one of the things that sets Soil and Water here and you know, apart from most of the county, right, is this level of respect that everyone has for the staff in the county and in the neighborhoods, in the community, and, you know, for those that know what the services we provide and use them. And so I think that highlighting our commitment to this is one of the most important things we can showcase down the road, and it may be something worthwhile to just even elevate somehow, to showcase, you know, that we live this, right? Like, we live the code of ethics. We're not just putting it there, but this is, because when I read this, I think it embodies your staff, you and your staff. But I mean, it really does. It embodies why Northern Virginia Soil and Water is held to the esteem it is. And so I think this is a really important document, even though most of the time people are like, oh, you know, check the box, look at it. But it really is an embodiment of why this organization is so.
Yeah, you know, I'm sorry, Monica, I didn't mean to cut you off. One of the things and Heather may recall this conversation, when I broached this topic, I went with it with the question of, why do we work so well together? How do we capture that idea of how have we been able to maintain this reputation, and how have we been able to maintain this level of respect within the community? What are those aspects that are really important to us that really carry, that, just like you said, embody the work of the district and help to, you know, that are just sustained over time? That these are the kinds of qualities that we're looking for as well in other team members that will fit into this culture, you know, within our organization, which is so important. But yeah, you know, let me ask you another question, Monica. In knowing that you've with your work history as well, and you've seen a number of different code of ethics, do you have any aspects of code of ethics that you've seen that you just really appreciated, and you're like, Yeah, that's, you know, this is really a solid
I
code to
mean,
follow.
I don't know if I'm a live in the day kind of person, so sometimes something sticks out and then it just kind of slowly filters away. So I can't think off the top of my head, um, not so much what was written, but how people lived it, right? So
Mhm.
like there have been some organizations that it's part of your paperwork and it's buried in 20 leaves of stuff that you read and take home, if you read it. And then there's others that elevate it, to the point of it's part of their daily culture or their monthly culture. So there's, drops of Thanksgiving where there's showcasing the respect. They showcase the stewardship piece if someone's doing something in the community outside of their job. They're elevating the individuals that are living the ethics. And that stuck out for me more so than what's been written, but just how I've seen organizations sometimes elevate it to an acknowledgement level of we're going to acknowledge that you're living by these ethics. And in some ways it's acknowledged because of the respect you all have and the way that you're able to work with each other. But that's been the biggest impression from an ethics perspective. Not so much what I've seen written down, that just kind of varies a little bit, but just how it's been, if it's used or if it's just a piece of paper.
Right. Yeah,
If that makes sense.
it does.
Laura, I have access to 5 other groups' bylaws or policy statements. I'll check and see if there's any ethics stuff in there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, if you see, or Jerry, I mean, if you see anything that it jumps out at you, it'd be great if you could send it to Laura and I, and we can just ensure that it makes it into, something for consideration. But yeah, I'll if this is highlighted for the responsibility piece along with the others, I will add that to my little wordsmithing just to see. And you may say, this again, you've done this with everyone at work. So I don't want to disregard their input in any way, shape, or form. But if there's something I can lend that might support it, or people say, this is actually a little bit, I don't know, just something to think about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that. Okay, I've highlighted it, Monica. So
Thanks.
it's
So it can't escape my attention.
right. But I do think, as we reviewed it as a team, there was a long list of examples that certainly came up as we talked through each of these different principles. And that, that's a pretty rewarding experience. And this may be something as well, Jerry, as we think about our strategic planning process and bringing this back up again, as just, looking at it from, this is very staff centric, but maybe there's something that we want to look at as well in terms of maybe it's the same core principles, but looking at it more organizationally as well as part of our strategic planning process. So something to think, it's something for us to kind of keep in mind.
Laura, you're proposing that this be incorporated into our policy document? There's nothing like it in there now, is there?
There is not. This is actually part of the Fairfax County policies. So this has been modified by staff, and it's been kind of an internal document, but it is the code of ethics and the standards of conduct are part of the Fairfax County personnel policies.
Okay.
Thank you. So that was all I had for that one.
Okay. Well, we'll jump into standards of conduct then. And again, these are things that are expected of all employees, interns, and volunteers. As you can see here, I'm sorry that I keep reading from the slides, but
No.
I made myself really good notes. Go ahead.
I just meant to say one thing. Who came up with the be curious, not critical? Because it's a great line. I just don't think that was in the county's one. Yeah.
That was
okay.
not in the
That was
county.
not in, I know that wasn't in the county's one. Not, no offense to the county, but I know that was not that is not a
No.
county wording. So
that's one of the things that makes the district special.
yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very, very nice. Okay. That I just wanted to comment on that. That's kind of one of my personal favorites. Okay.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad. Well, I will share that with others.
I need to put that in big letters in front of my desk so I can practice.
Laura, when you say that staff has contributed to that, you're talking about our staff?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you run this by all the people, get their ideas too?
Oh, yes. Yes,
Good.
this was developed as staff over a couple of staff meetings.
Good.
Okay.
So the standards of conduct, these are really straight from Fairfax County with modifications made basically just to switch county representation over to district representation, as well as to just change, everywhere where it said the county, switch it over to the district. The reason, and I'm interested in going through these with you all, because I think that this is really the standards of conduct set the tone. Again, for giving new team members an understanding of what the expectations are, and then also, that it's helpful to refresh this with current team members as well, so that they're, when things come up, we can say, remember, this is part of our standards of conduct. This is what helps us to function so well. These are the expectations that we have. So these are very important. And again, the reason why we're doing this now, I do want to let you know that this is actually a part of the disciplinary section of Fairfax County's code, but I don't see it just as we use this to discipline people. I see this again as something that sets the tone for the entire organization. And that's why, we're not discussing it during that portion, although we may want to revisit this, when we get to that point as well in a couple more weeks. So, but again, the standards of conduct, these apply to all employees, interns, and volunteers as well. Not everything in here will apply to a volunteer, and not everything will apply to an intern, but it's just, again, something that to just kind of keep in mind. Leave and attendance, essentially here that employees are expected to comply with the rules and regulations governing hours of work, absences, and use of leave. And then these are the prohibitions: failing to report to work as scheduled without proper notification to the supervisor, leaving work without permission, arriving late for work on a consistent basis. So again, it's ensuring the accountability that there needs to be communication with the supervisor if there's a change in schedule and things like that. The good news is this is one of those things that I don't really have to worry about with our team members. They are all very, very good about it. We've had one intern where we did have a bit of a challenge with, that was many, many, many years ago, who was not providing appropriate notification to Lily, who was the supervising that position at the time. But we're pretty fortunate that everybody is pretty good.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
One of the things is that, now that we have this new virtual world, and there's the terminology of, arriving late or leaving early or whatever is somewhat outdated, given that there's opportunities. And also you have a lot of field, it's a slightly different makeup, right? Because there's also field time. And so that doesn't, is there consideration of, and how do you feel you need, as an executive director, to include that? Or, you know, in the foreseeable future, if you had someone that, like that intern, that maybe didn't do what they were supposed to do, would you see a need to, because when I look at this, you know, I'm looking, there's, you know, again, I'm going back to my, as a board role, I feel that, you know, I'm looking at a higher elevation, right? I just want to make sure you have what you need to continue doing a successful job. And when I see this, the thing that pops out into me is, are we doing enough to address this new virtual world? And are we doing enough to address what that expectation, do they have a good understanding of what their expectation is? And how that noting where they are, you know, what that process is.
Yes, yes. And that's actually part of the COVID policies that we put forward. And actually we can ask Heather for her opinion on this too. But yes, I do work with our team. I want to know, I try to be that good example by setting up my schedule up front and as a demonstration for sort of what's expected, right? So recognizing that when folks look at my calendar, being upfront with the times that I'm going to be available and the times where I may be occupied with juggling the many things that happen in the virtual setting. And so that communication side is really, really important. And we work very hard to identify what the normal workday is no longer normal. And it's a bit varied for many of the team members, but what I want to know from them is during what period of time are they planning on being available for work? And field work is still work. So if they directly report to they do not have to come into the office and punch their time, as an example. If they're going straight to a field visit, before coming into the office, that's still part of their contributing day. But it really isn't an issue. And I feel like I've got what I need, and I can, usually if somebody is abusing these kinds of things, it is apparent. But we are in communication. It's not like I'm checking in on everybody every day.
Right.
But it is, what I mean by that is I'm not like, okay, who's on at 8 o'clock and who's off at 5. We've gotten into the rhythm of understanding how everybody is working these days. I have access to everybody's calendar and stuff. So I don't really worry about it. I think it's more arriving late for work on a consistent basis.
Right.
Yeah, that would be something where we do have a set schedule, and we're seeing it's they're abusing that.
And I think the prohibited from is great. I'm just curious, like for the expected to, I'm wondering if there should be an extra dot on communicating, are expected to your point about communication, having a line in there about communication of schedule and availability as needed by supervising authority or whoever that is, you know what I mean? Because it might be, like you mentioned last time, Lily was the supervisor. So like, I don't know if you feel that's a need, looking at it from a perspective of like, if there was another director to come in and be like, well, what is that exactly? Does that, you know, what's that standard? Is that enough for them? Or would it be beneficial to have that communication piece? Because I do think that that's, you know, one of the biggest issues. I think sometimes, I could be wrong, feel free to, but ensuring that that's kind of the onus is on that expectation.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Does that make sense?
It does.
I have, if I may, I have one comment under the employees are prohibited from that might make it a little bit more applicable to both in-office work and the remote work and the field work. And on the first and third, bullet points to add, either add or replace work with work commitments. So failing to report to work or work commitments. So for instance, most of the time, I don't know, even when I was in the office, you know, if I were a little bit later or earlier or whatever, but if I am showing up for the Potomac Watershed Roundtable meeting an hour after the meeting starts and the name tags aren't ready, or I'm consistently, you know, tardy when I'm meeting my coworkers for something, you know, I think that would be more, that kind of, I feel like that kind of lends itself to a more modern
Yes,
interpretation.
I agree, Heather. That's a really good point.
Because it makes it sound a little less like punching the clock.
Right.
That's true. Thank you.
Absolutely. And more so, yeah, there's that failure of, you know, just finishing what you have to do.
Right.
And like you mentioned, those little the notes of the little, you know, just consistently being late or whatever. But you're right. It's a good thing you have that SHRM stuff in your, you know, all the new lingo. I don't know if that's how you say SHRM, but I just say it.
I think
Yeah.
people do say SHRM, just
yeah,
like
yeah,
they do. I said shroom because my husband ate it when I said it, but I didn't.
oh.
Okay.
that's funny.
All right, sorry. Okay, I think, I mean, unless anyone else has a note on that, I'm good with this section.
I think this is pretty straightforward,
Mhm.
and I appreciate those adjustments. So this is a big one, and I apologize. I know this is super teeny tiny here, but Monica, this is the one. This is personal behavior and conduct, and this does relate to the a little bit of the equal opportunity, if you will, some of the similar language. But employees are expected to demonstrate professionalism. Well, see, I missed one, sorry. Support the district's commitment to excellent customer service at all times. Exercise courtesy, respect, and tact when dealing with fellow employees and the public, regardless of age, race, color, religion, sex, creed, national origin, marital status, disability, pregnancy, or related medical conditions, gender identity, sexual orientation, genetic information, union or political affiliation, veteran status, disabled veteran status, and any other factor unrelated to impartial conduct. Sorry, I got another county, I apologize. County business, and comply with the proper order of an authorized supervisor. So these, again, as you can see, were copied straight from the county document there. But again, apply to the work that we do as well.
I think, yeah, I like it. I would just, it's not even an issue. I would just consider, well, it doesn't matter. I think that second bullet is sometimes the important first one. But I think that I understand having, you know, spelling out the districts as the first, but to me, it's, you know, just, the second one almost summarizes, I mean, the first one almost is a summary of what that second bullet is, right? So like, I just maybe consider elevating it to the first bullet, but it's semantics. I don't know.
I mean, that's easy enough to do, to just reorient, you know, the bullet points here.
And it's just, but that's just a personal preference of mine, so I don't want to influence. But again, I can point that out to the full board as to why, and it certainly it's not a big deal. It's just more semantics. I just think that, you know.
I think it's really, sorry, and I know I just made it really small, but I really think that this is the big piece.
Yeah.
And you know, it's that respect of really everyone. And not taking any of these other, you know, affiliations into consideration, you know, certainly not demonstrating your biases. But nonetheless, I think that's fine. I mean, these are all equally important.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And I think that's why we have them as bullet points and not necessarily numbered. But I think that that's fine.
Yeah, and this is pretty boilerplate and it has all the updated terminology, at least to my understanding. I'm not sure. I'll double check to see if something's missing, but I can't, I mean, this seems like it's got the full, all of the components to what. And you may even want to bold that line. Maybe.
This
but-
one, the one that I highlighted here, or
Yeah, it may be worthwhile. Yeah.
are there any other thoughts or any other things that you may recall from past experiences that you've had that would also be good to call out?
No, I mean, for the most part, I'm trying to think if there's, this kind of goes back to that ethical piece, and so I'm not sure, but like if there's an accountability piece that we need to include, to. But I might think about that and see if there might be, if there's nothing to highlight, say, but I'm just wondering if I need to think about wordsmithing an accountability piece.
Like a personal accountability?
Mm-hmm.
And are you and sorry, Monica, just to make sure I'm clear, so you're thinking personal accountability to meeting the intentions of like the code of ethics?
Possibly, and that's what I'm trying to understand a little. I'm trying to think about how to wordsmith this because there's an accountability should something and I can't, it's late in the night and I'm trying to and I think I just need to frame it. I'm not sure if it belongs in here, but from a perspective of you have comply with the proper order of an authorized supervisor, but I also think like there's compliance, but there's also personal accountability should an issue arise or demonstrate some level of self-awareness and personal accountability in situations that, I don't know, but I have to think about that if that's appropriate or not. So I'm gonna, and then maybe that's in a different space, but.
Do we want to call in a friend here? See if Jerry or Chris have any ideas on that. Jerry.
I have nothing to offer on that.
Okay.
Nor do I.
Well, thanks, guys.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Other than what I said earlier that I'll look into.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, that might be more of an ethical thing. So let me just double check and see and compare and contrast and see if there's a space for it. So I'll make a note to myself. Thank you.
All right, I just added a placeholder there. Okay. So there is a long list of things employees are prohibited from, and these are really more range from the harassment and rude behavior, rude and unprofessional behavior, disorderly conduct, even if the behavior is not expressly forbidden by regulation or law, to bullying, to racist, sexist, and ethnic slurs, doing anything that may violate federal or state law, whether you're in the office environment or off of work, manufacturing, distributing, possessing, using, or being under the influence of alcohol or illegal drugs while at work, threatening, assaulting, intimidating. So these definitely, represent the escalation of conflict, really, as well as many of the other issues that may come up that just demonstrate a not complying with really our code of ethics.
Yeah, that all looks good to me. I didn't see anything that was outstanding or missing.
You probably want to delete the one about chapter 2 of the regulations since we don't have a chapter 2.
Yeah, I apologize. The version that you have, Monica, is a little bit more cleaned up here. I think
okay, because I'm like, what are you? I don't have that. I
Yeah.
was looking. The Word document doesn't have that, Jerry. So I'm like,
Yeah.
version
So
two.
Yeah,
Laura's already ahead of us, right?
I'm embarrassed. I didn't check this again, and I apologize. I had actually removed that chapter 2 reference and just left the engaging in bullying.
Good.
But thank you, Jerry. Thanks for catching that.
Yeah. Now I don't feel bad. I was like, did I miss something?
Okay, well, we'll continue on then. So this is protection and proper use of district property, funds, and records. So employees are expected to use public property, resource and funds in accordance with established procedures, maintaining confidentiality with regards to client or customer information in accordance with state and federal law. And again, just please ignore these sections related to county policy. Maintain employee confidentiality by preventing the disclosure of personal information to any unauthorized party as well. So it's this is really, again, maintaining our resources and being a good steward of our resources, and then also just respecting the privacy of others to the extent that we can.
Mm-hmm. Do we need to put in colleague in that regard to client customer information, or does it matter? Is that captured in the maintain employee confidentiality?
I mean, we can certainly add it in here. I think it was probably, I think this one was intended to be more externally focused, and this one was meant to be a little bit more internally focused. So
yeah,
it may just be redundant.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Thank you. I see that, yeah. Okay.
Another thing that we could add in here is compliance with Foia and records retention
Yes.
requirements.
Yes, that's actually really important. That's good.
Are employees given FOIA training?
Not to the full extent, because I'm the Foia officer, everything gets routed to me, but they have an understanding if somebody does ask for a record, that they provide it. But no, it's not a requirement. But we do cover FOIA as part of orientation.
Okay.
I think that's particularly important for employees who may have not worked in a governmental setting before as well, because some of these kinds of things may be newer in terms of what some of those standards and requirements are of government.
Yeah, and certainly interns would fall into that space too, because they would be so, it's good for them to have that basic lesson, and certainly anybody that, like you mentioned, comes in that doesn't have the county perspective or the government perspective.
Right.
So it's definitely worth putting in there. Okay.
Heather, do you have any other thoughts on this particular component?
I don't think so. I appreciate that FOIA and records retention gets included, because I do think that that's important. And you're absolutely right. If you're not in our realm, you may not understand it.
Right. one of the things that I did do, Monica, I think I did this in your version, is for what the employees are prohibited from, is I think I kept county in that because of our access to county records through GIS and elsewhere, that we do have an obligation to protect that county data as well, that even though we have access to it. So I believe I put using NVS WCD and county data, facilities, equipment, property, employees for other than officially approved activities. And then engaging in any action prohibited from county information technology policies and procedures. Again, because we are embedded with Fairfax County DIT and we rely on them for services, we do have to follow their policies and procedures as it relates to IT. It can be very overwhelming at times as well. Carelessly or willfully causing destruction to county property, knowingly falsifying or conspiring to falsify any record or report, whether paper or electronic. So things such as resumes, time, and they give you a couple of examples there as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's good to note because there is such an embedment of the district with the county, especially since you are housed there, all the other, and then right with the data. And I think that it's, you know, people should be aware that they're not that far removed from this actual connection to government.
Right. Yeah, we've definitely, while there are certainly protections in place as well, we still do have access to quite a bit. GIS data is a great example of that. So need to be good stewards. Okay. Let me just make a computer highlight that we added this here. Is there something else, Monica?
Nope, I was actually moving on to driving in my head already.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, good. We do have some other policies related to truck use and things like that that we have, again, because we purchased the truck through the county program, but it's still and it is our truck, but it's sort of leased to us from the county. It's a very unique arrangement. We still fall under the Department of Vehicle Services policies. And actually, they're very good policies as well. Heather can recall we went through these again back in August as we were getting our new truck. But from a driving perspective, again, employees are expected to operate all district vehicles in accordance with federal, state, and local driving laws. Operate privately owned vehicles will be used for district business in accordance to state and local driving laws. And remain aware of the status of operator licenses to report any suspension or revocation of driving privileges to their supervisors immediately. So this would be, all of our employees do have access and the ability to utilize our district vehicles. So it is important if they do have any sort of, suspensions or anything like that, anything that we need to be aware of, that it's brought forward.
Is there anything specific to the from just out of curiosity? We had from when I was at Alex Renew, we had access to the cars too, but we had a really intensive driving kind of presentation we had to sit through and pass. And to enable us to be able to use the vehicles because they were considered a public vehicle. So representing what was basically an offshoot or an arm of the government. And so there were, it's captured here with the in accordance with federal, state, and local driving laws, but I'm just wondering if the county has specific if there's an adherence to anything that's specific to the county that needs to be represented here, if there's or if you feel like that's pretty much captured. And I know social media is a new thing, you can't drive with your phone. So I don't know if it has to be that or parking when you're, pulling
over if you're, so that gets into more of the more of the policies that we have in terms of truck use.
Mhm.
And that's really where Fairfax County, they've got some good policies, to be quite honest, and they are very applicable to the things that we do. And because we do use motor pool vehicles as well, we have access to the county's motor pool. Again, that it makes sense to go through those. But there isn't, aside from the training that and presentations that I've pulled together for our staff, I don't think there's a training. Heather, can you recall a training?
Not that I know of, no. I mean, there may be something, but it's not something that we've, been offered or included in, as far as I know.
One of the things, I mean, we can certainly put in here, employees are expected to maintain a clean driving record. But we can also, this is something maybe when we start thinking about, I just lost the word, conditions of employment. Right now, we do a background check for everyone, and if we need to be considering doing a driving record check as well. It's something worth considering, and it's something we can talk about when we get to that point.
Because I'm assuming the insurance liability is covered by you, or is it covered by the county?
It's covered by the district.
So if they take a county vehicle and then crash it, the district would have to owe the county.
No, we paid for the truck.
Right.
So we covered the cost of the truck.
Okay.
But we would have to file an insurance claim.
Okay.
So the county, we would not be reimbursing the county.
Gotcha. Thank you. It's good to know. I just was I didn't realize I wasn't thinking about it in that term. Yeah.
All right. Well, one of the other things, sorry, we're going into a little bit of a wormhole here, but one of the other things that relates to the truck and our arrangement with the county is because it is sort of, again, leased, we use the county's maintenance service. So they ping us, every few months and for an oil change and things like that. And we've got our little code within the system so that we're integrated into that. And that, again, is one of the reasons why we follow a lot of the policies that the county has established. Just makes sense.
Yeah.
And again, they're good common sense policies.
Sure.
So employees are prohibited from knowingly operating a vehicle on county business without a valid operator's license, possessing and using or being under the influences of alcohol, illegal drugs, or prescriptive drugs, that so on and so forth.
Yep. Good. That makes sense. That's all good.
Okay. All right. So from a safety perspective, again, employees are expected to promote safe and healthy working environment by complying with all appropriate safety and health regulations, promptly report safety and health hazards so that they can be corrected before injuries result, dress in appropriate attire. I took out again uniform, safety equipment as specified by the standards and work rules of our organization, and immediately report workplace violence to the appropriate authority. I removed supervisor and put appropriate authority because if I was blamed for workplace violence, they would want to go to the board, right? So that's why we put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
And so Jerry, this is one of those areas, again, when we were talking about sort of the that wonderful compilation of different policies from the district, the county, and then from also the personnel management handbook developed by the association. We had in there dress code. This kind of, again, yeah, it's one simple statement, but it's just, acknowledging that we have folks who are intended to dress appropriately. I've
Yeah.
had to deal with that. I have had to deal with that. You might be surprised, but very early on, I had to deal with somebody who didn't necessarily address appropriately.
Yeah, you told me about that.
Yep.
Listen, it happens everywhere, and it's the most
Yeah.
unfortunate experience that
It is
someone
unfortunate.
didn't learn how to dress themselves appropriately for a work situation. You don't even want to know what I've seen, and it's just not pretty.
Yeah, no, I've been there. I have been
Yeah.
there, either in this role or in others, that's for sure. Is there anything else related to safety? From expectations, I think again, it's pretty standard here.
Yep.
Employees are prohibited from bringing a gun, either concealed or displayed. And again, I kept this in here in particular and maintained it as county premises because we are on county premises. And within the district office certainly as well. And I removed sections of this as it relates to those that are required to carry firearms. Our employees do not require to carry firearms. So actually, I'm just going to remove this section here. And
by the term to work, it can mean to work being the field as well, correct?
right, I think this may be a good place to put work commitments again, just like Heather was referring to earlier. And I'll make a mental note to go through and word it this way throughout the document.
Yeah. Because that sticks out a little bit as to could be misinterpreted if so work commitments make sense there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Laura, on that one, Swiss Army knives don't count as weapons, right?
No, a pocket knife or a Swiss Army knife, are totally fine. I carry a pocket knife myself. But one of the things that I was thinking of, honestly, as I don't know if you saw me kind of going back and forth a little bit, is we do have a machete. We have a machete when we do have to get into thicker brush areas, and that can be considered a weapon. So I was kind of going back and forth a little bit on whether or not to remove this section. And I may just remove this one here.
Well, you could have axes or shovels or Pulaskis or anything that could be a weapon if you misused it.
Right.
But Swiss Army knives have gotten me in trouble several times going into federal offices. I've had to go out and hide.
Well, I think, Chris, if I'm not mistaken, and this I may be confusing because I haven't looked up at the law, but there's a inch level, right, on your knife that you're allowed to have before it's considered a weapon that's above. And I know, like, for federal aviation, I think it was 5 inches was the level. It's too much, and they would confiscate it because they would consider that not, well, this is pre 9/11. But I don't know if there's a technically if there's a size on a knife that would actually go from being your like little pocket knife to something that's considered a weapon.
Well, in courthouses, they will hold it for you till you go out. On an airplane, it has to be in checked baggage, not carry on.
Yeah.
When
Well,
I
now
went to
you can't even
EPA
take a
or
reason.
Justice, you had to go outside and hide it. And I got yelled at once by the guard that said, "I saw where you hide it. That's not good enough. You have to go do it again." It was like ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, Chris, there's one little caveat within this statement that says it's carried for the purpose of inflicting or threatening bodily injury. I think that's one of the things. Now, right now, knives, pocket knives, things like that are not prohibited from the county buildings. Guns are prohibited from the county buildings. So I think this was really intentional as to acknowledge that if you're doing a concealed carry, it's not appropriate to bring that into the county facility. But but I see your point. But if we had to change this because we did have stricter security requirements in our building, then we can approach it there. But I think what they're really trying to do is you're right. We've got machetes, and those can be menacing looking. They have a purpose for our organization, and we just need to be prepared to explain that if approached.
Yeah.
Several of those buildings are not what I would call highly secure, and after January 6th, you might see a little tightening of places, and who knows what rules they'll make.
Well, and to let you know, as we discussed during the COVID-19, is our building has been shut down, except for between the period of 9 o'clock in the morning to noon, when the lobby is open to the public. But otherwise, the public cannot get above the first floor. They are, you have to use your badge in order to get any further than the first floor. But yeah, you're right. We could see some other strengthening of security. And to be honest, that's something we've in the Heritage Building have discussed quite a bit, especially with the establishment of the public safety headquarters right next door. We've discussed that a lot. And as you all know, our office is secured also with a key card reader, where you have to have that key card in order to be able to get into the office, into our office suite. So we've enhanced some things, but I think specifically when it comes to weapons, we may see, Chris, that there's going to be some further cracking down in government buildings.
I actually think it's appropriate. You never know what's going to happen. And
True.
You could get anywhere in the building just about.
So just because it's already 8:54, I want to kind of be cognizant that we all need to go to bed. So I don't know how much more time we have left, but if we can, I enjoy the conversation, but I think we have to keep on plowing through.
I had one other question for a quick one, hopefully, on the driver's license part. I assume somebody's gotten a ticket. And
they have, they have, and I think that's where, when we get to that point, I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead, but who's responsible for paying it?
Oh, they are. Yeah, that's part of our policies right now. So if we have had people who have received tickets, and it is the employee's responsibility to.
Should that be said on this, when the driving part?
Sure. Yes, and we can also re-emphasize that. Yeah, let me think.
There could be another common accountability here, like personal accountability for failure to abide by, I don't know. Yeah.
I'm going to think about that one a little bit more because
then
because I think it does make sense. And again, with the DVS policies, the Department of Vehicle Services policies, yeah.
What I was going to say is there a deeper dive in those policies that reflect what the responsibility and the onus is on the employee when they get their ability to drive, that they get that information.
I'll have to take a look. It goes into more detail. But I'm going to use that as just a little placeholder because I might want to modify that language to say that we just follow, the DVS policies.
Yeah. That would
you have a problem if people start racking up a few. Is that cause for termination?
That might be in the policy too, because that was in our policy for our with the vehicles, we got to use those vehicles. The policies spoke to how many tickets that you were responsible for the ticket, but then there were additional should you continue getting them. So I'm assuming that the county has the same kind of, that level of policy is in the it should be in there because it was in there for when I was working with that. in Alexandria, so I would assume Fairfax has it.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. There's some of those disciplinary actions certainly where, you know, if somebody gets a ticket, you know, you go through the process of, hey, okay, look, make sure you're following appropriate laws, things like that. And then as it get more egregious, definitely, you know, we can step in and revoke privileges. You know, you're no longer able to use a county vehicle or a district vehicle. You're no longer able to use motor pool and doing some of those kinds of things. Some of it is just like, whoops, wasn't quite thinking or whatever, and it's just like, okay, well, it's, you know, depends upon the situation certainly, and that's where just some understanding whether or not this is somebody's behavior or if it's a consistent thing, a consistent oversight, or if it's, wow, this is really unusual that this happened, and it's a true surprise. So yeah, anyway, we DVS and, you know, everything is a whole nother meeting. Jumping over to outside employment, conflict of interest, and political activities of employees. And again, I apologize because I didn't modify this. Monica's got the modified version, but essentially it's very similar to the kind of conflict of interest act requirements that the board has as well. So if the employees have a conflict of interest, they need to disclose that, and they need to disqualify them from any decision in which that conflict may be presumed to exist. I think that's a really important phrase, where it may be presumed to exist, because this gets into the idea of sometimes conflict of interest can be perceived, and that perception can be even worse than the reality. So just, I think that that's an important one. And then obtaining permission from their appointing authority prior to engaging in any private business activity, employment, or other activity outside of work that conflicts or interferes with their full discharge of their official duties or the work that they perform as district employees. This has surprisingly come up. And, you know, these are a little bit different. If somebody wanted to do a side job, I'm going to pull Heather and I into this example because we both sold 31 bags when we were both working with the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. And it was just a little side thing, and you know, had really nothing to do with the work that we did on behalf of NVRC. But just disclosing that, yes, we have this other thing, and we commit to only engaging in those activities after normal business, after our business work days was important. Sorry. And so, but we have had situations where employees have realized, oh, you know, I could actually do a little side hustle helping out with this, which is sort of related to the work that I do. And I, you know, and everything. Let's see how you could bring that as part of the district work world, or you're going to have to explore that opportunity at a later date. So that's really what those activities are for expectations. Is there anything else on the expectation side that you guys would like to acknowledge?
No, I noticed you didn't put in disclose, but I wasn't sure if you needed to have that. It just says disqualify yourself, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to have a disclose any information that may be presumed for, you know.
Yeah, I think it's important to just have that clarity and upfrontness.
Yep. No, this is
I'll work on that language a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, this is very this is very standard and important.
Yeah, exactly. So it gets a little bit more interesting down in here, where there's, again, personal interests in any contract with the county or the district. I think it's important, again, because of our close relationship and the way that our funding is, that we're acknowledging that relationship with the county as well, unless it's for something completely different. But this is taking bribes and taking anything that might influence the ability to do their job. or influence their decision making. And then engaging in political activities. So this is really where we're getting into, you know, not necessarily, they can, when they're on district business, you know, not necessarily staying neutral. It's the same sort of thing as with our board. You know, we remain neutral. We serve as independents, and it's that same kind of ethic that we bring to the staff as well.
There apparently are footnotes for several of these things, the last 4 bullets.
Yes, those are references actually to state and local code references. And I think most of this relates in particular to uniformed service. So it challenges us a little bit to try to modify them for our specific needs, but they're helpful references.
So they would be included?
We can include them, yes. Are you surprised by that, Jerry?
No, I don't see them. I don't know what they say. If it's just about wearing uniforms, we don't wear uniforms, so why?
Well,
No. What I'm saying is it's related to uniform service, those that are in the uniform service. So the police, fire department, and things like that. So those where they have other union representation.
Right. So we don't have anybody in that category, so why even address it?
So like I said, I need to go back through these a little bit more in regards to whether or not they make sense for us in particular. And that's what I was referring to. So, but
yeah, I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think if you say something like you're wearing your Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District swag and you're going and trying to ask for money for something or talking about things, I mean, there's a way to word this because it does, you need to make sure you're not being identified as someone that's speaking in that district voice, and being seen as too leaning, because then it just showcases a little too much political, too much of a political lens in a very nonpartisan space. So even though it's not the uniform part, maybe it can be tweaked to kind of.
If you're displaying a the district logo, fine.
right, it is. It's sort of more of the, you know, it isn't precluding our staff from personally participating in political activities if that is something that they want to do. It's just they have to be careful if they're wearing a district piece of clothing. It can be perceived again that they're representing a district interest. And actually, that's something I think Monica is included in yours. I added it as another bullet toward the end, which is you'll see this last bullet is suggesting or implying that the county or the district has officially endorsed a political party, candidate, or campaign. One of the things that I added was suggesting or implying that the district has officially endorsed a piece of state, federal, or local legislation as well. And that's really important because I get asked quite a bit and periodically from folks to say, hey, can you promote this? And I say, no, I cannot promote that. That is not something that the district has accepted. If I were to promote it, it could imply that the district has supported that particular piece of legislation, and I can't do that. But you can work these other angles. If it's, I admire it, it looks, you know, but use these other angles in order to share your information. So anyway, just kind of, again, protecting that perspective on the district.
I have a quick question. Are district employees allowed to run for public office?
Yes, so long as it does not interfere with it, and so long as it's not a conflict of interest. So, for example, if if one of our employees wanted to run for a board of supervisors position, for example, they would have to likely step down from the district because of a conflict of interest. But if I live in Prince William County and I wanted to run for my board of supervisors, then it wouldn't necessarily be an issue because there's not the direct connection with the district.
Okay, is that makes sense? Is that something that needs to be outlined here? I guess I just wondered under the bullet point, engaging in political activities, or is that just covered under the conflict of interest? You know, the bullet points at the top where, you know, the conflict of interest.
I think what I saw, and that's why I said the disclose part, is because you want to have that communication. Maybe that needs to be strengthened, but when you just, you know, disclose, it's not saying it's not disclose and disqualify, but you want to disclose if you're in consideration of a decision that may have a conflict of have a presumed conflict of interest with your supervisor / authority, because again, you know, that's, I think that's a good place for it.
You may have to share that with me one more time, Monica. I added it down here. Employees are prohibited from running for political office that would have a direct presumed conflict of interest with the work of the district.
It's not just the work, it's the financing. I just say conflict of interest with in the district. Yeah.
All right. Good point.
Yep.
All right, just made a couple of notes here. All right.
I would say pending legislation, because there's lots of legislation that we definitely endorse already. If it's existing Virginia law, we endorse it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's things that are coming up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pending legislation or policy position, because not everything's legislation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Those are some great additions. I appreciate taking the time to look through this because it is important.
Yeah.
All right. I know we're all fading very, very fast here. What's that, Jerry?
I'm fading. Yep.
Yeah. So I do want to get into leave policies. That was the other thing on our list today. And maybe what I can do is introduce it, highlight a couple of key areas, and then give it, if in terms of kind of wordsmithing things, we can do that maybe as homework. But let me introduce our leave policies. So again, our district policies document just references that we follow Fairfax County's policies, and Fairfax County's leave policies are chapter 10 of the personnel policies. So it is important that our employees are exercising good judgment when employing these policies as well, and that we're working toward those rational outcomes. But this was it of what we had before, and what I am suggesting is that we incorporate this wording into our policy document that essentially just acknowledges that we provide a leave program, and that all employees are encouraged to take annual leave for vacation purposes. The county's policy says of 2 consecutive weeks each year during the year, careful consideration shall be given to desires of the employees in granting shorter periods of annual leave. I'd rather leave that off because I don't want to be that prescriptive. If an employee wants to take 2 weeks and they've got the ability to do that, I want to encourage that. I think that that's great. If they choose to take just long weekends, periodically, then that's okay too. So I'm trying to leave that a little bit more flexible, because some folks may see that and say, oh, I can only take 2 weeks of leave consecutively every year, and that's what they will do, and they won't necessarily use the flexibility of the leave that we currently have.
Yeah.
The executive director shall grant leave in accordance with these rules based on work requirements and whenever possible, the personal wishes of the employee. To be quite honest, they're usually, most of our employees, it really isn't an issue. They're thinking ahead, and even now in particular, there's much better notification of when they want to take leave and everything. I can't really think of any solid good excuse for why I wouldn't grant somebody the use of their leave, unless it had a direct impact on their ability to complete a project, or it placed a major inconvenience or had some implication on somebody else.
Sure.
But again, our employees I really encourage them to work together. So if they're going to be taking an extended leave of absence, taking a long vacation or something, that they're working together to ensure that it's not going to create an imposition on anybody else. Our sick leave shall be used when an employee is incapacitated by sickness or injury, childbirth. So the whole wide range of things here. So the only big modification I'm suggesting is, again, just removing this portion.
Yeah, I think that kind of statement is applicable when you have a lot of people under a lot of pressure and they, for psychological reasons, really need to take 2 weeks. I don't think any of us, I was under a high pressure job. I never felt the need to take 2 weeks.
I have taken a 2-week vacation, but it was really because of long extended travel. But it has not been for a psychological reason, although it does feel good.
that would be the only reason that an employer would say, I really encourage you to take 2 weeks, because we know you're going to need it.
And you run like hell from that job. No,
That's not the situation here. So I agree taking that.
Okay. And Monica, you feel okay with that too?
Yes,
Okay
absolutely.
with this modification?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
right.
feel okay with it, but when I used to travel a lot internationally, I took a couple later in my career, 3-week vacations. And I'll tell you, vacation doesn't even really start till after you've taken a week and a half.
I would agree, Chris. And there's some really interesting, sorry, I was going to go off tangent there. We'll talk about that another time in terms of this whole idea of the 3-week vacation, and especially in leadership positions.
The only question I had on that one is, do you have a standard format to submit a request?
It's pretty informal, Chris. It's honestly, it's a request. Usually I'm meeting pretty regularly with staff, but it can be an email. Just, hey, Laura, I want to take the week off between, Christmas and New Year. Or I'm going and I'm taking my kids back up to college. I'm going to be gone these weeks in May, or whatever the case might be. So yeah, it's pretty informal. I add them to my calendar. We're going to get into this in a little bit, and you'll see that the requirement is that the employee maintains their leave record, which is checked every 2 weeks by me as part of the payroll process. And the system has worked well. And so it really is incumbent on the employee, and they can forecast ahead with the new timesheet system that we have to be able to see, oh, how much am I going to need if I want to do that 2-week ideal, once in a lifetime trip with my family. They can forecast ahead. With our work week, Again, we do maintain a flexible schedule for staff, and again, being able to be accommodating. Our team is pretty good about writing to me and communicating with me if they're going to be having out of the normal kind of schedule changes. Again, our hours are typically 8 to 4:30. Some work 9 to 5:30. I work 7 to 9, and then throughout the day, and then different periods of time, just again because of my erratic schedule with COVID in particular. But they have communicated those schedules with me, and I've got a good handle on who's working when and respecting that time as well. If there is any sort of need for deviation, then we have a conversation. There's a written email request, and that revised schedule can be approved as well. And again, usually there isn't an issue with approving those kinds of things.
You're very ahead of your time. Good job.
Thank you. So we won't get into what leave is. I wanted to jump into this component here in regards to what other types of leave are offered. This is, again, the long list from Fairfax County. And the ones that are starred here are the ones that are actually referenced in the association's Personnel Management Resource Guide as well. So at a minimum, the state association and DCR is not requiring any specific type of leave, aside from, of course, holiday leave and some of these others. But there is the Family Medical Leave Act that we must follow as well. But I wanted to introduce a few of these that are kind of unique to Fairfax County as well. And the first one is actually parental leave and paid family leave. We have referred to it as parental leave, and actually this may come as new to Heather as well. The former policy was that for parental leave, it was after the birth or adoption or foster care placement, the employee was able to get 80 hours of paid leave. So 2 weeks of paid leave, which I think is really generous. At the time when I was having my children, I had no parental leave. I fell under the Family Medical Leave Act and was only able to use those, whatever sick leave I had accrued and any annual leave as well. So I thought that this was really quite generous. When I first came on board, this was what we had accepted. But the county has changed it, and now what they offer is, this is actually very, very generous, and I think it's wonderful. That all merit employees, including those that are in their initial probationary period, are eligible for paid family leave. And those merit employees that are in their initial probationary period who become eligible for this, okay, so anyway, that just tells you when it happens. But full-time employees would be eligible to take up to 240 hours of paid family leave in a 12-month period of time. So that's really very generous. It's really very generous, and I think it's great. So it's 3 times essentially what it was before, which is really great. So that's six weeks essentially of paid family leave. Merit employees scheduled to work less than 30 hours or 80 hours per pay period. So our part-time people would have a prorated rate on that as well. And then it runs concurrently with the Family Medical Leave Act. Again, don't worry about section that's just here. And we do, again, fall under the Family Medical Leave Act as well. So this would be a policy. This has been what we have done in the past, but this would be essentially the new policy if we were to continue to follow Fairfax County's leave policies. I think this is amazing. So any thoughts on this?
Laura, there's one typo. Third bullet, 360 hours for 24-hour staff. Is that 160?
Say that again, I'm sorry. This actually just doesn't apply to us.
Okay.
So, Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I mean, you know, what can I say? I had kids at the wrong time. I think this is great.
I know, me too.
I mean, my God. You know, I think that we're going to be seeing a shift to try to be, you know, better in this world, which does mean it's going to have impact on other staff and what that looks like, and sharing responsibilities. But it's definitely a move that has to be accommodated and thought about to better reflect the needs of our workforce, right? We're not a one income kind of generation anymore. Most of us are not in that boat. So it's imperative that we try to look at how organizations are addressing that. And of course, it starts with a good Family Medical Paid Leave Act, and then you know, seeing what that does, and thinking about workforce needs and issues that might be associated with that, and trying to think those through. But I do think it's critical.
I think that when I was looking through this again, I got confused because I've been so used to seeing parental leave, and then the paid family leave. All I kept seeing was Family Medical Leave Act, but this is very different. It coincides, and employees would still be covered, and really what FMLA does is protect their position, protect their place in their position. So it prevents the employer from being the bad one and saying, oh, well, you're going on leave. Well, I'm going to hire this other person over here, and you know, you can't come back, kind of thing. So it protects their space and their position. But what this does is really gives a very generous, amount of hours to an employee as they're, welcoming a new family member.
Yeah.
So I think it's great. I think it's great. I would encourage the board to, we have flexibility here. Again, this is something that we have followed Fairfax County's policy, but as you're seeing, they've made significant adjustments to their policy as well. So I think we can either continue to follow. What I'm hoping to avoid is trying to keep up with what Fairfax County is doing, and that we set a policy that we feel makes the most sense for us, and that's what we would, move forward with. It could be, if the board wanted to, we could provide 12 weeks of paid family leave.
Laura, can I just ask a question? Is this for the birth and adoption of children only, or does it apply to other things that come under Family Medical Leave Act, like caring for a sick loved one?
It does. It includes caring for a sick loved one as well. Yeah. So if you want, Monica, we can explore this a little bit more. I didn't have a chance to jump into it with too much detail, and certainly respecting the time, we're not going to be able to go through it too much tonight. So maybe what we do is put a pin in this one and come back to it.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm going to just jump ahead here and go to, we have followed Fairfax County's holiday schedule, is essentially what I wanted to let you know. The Virginia government holiday schedule is a little bit more generous. They offer about another day's worth of leave, but I think keeping with the Fairfax County holiday schedule makes a lot of sense, because when their offices are closed, our office would be closed as well. And it just makes it for a clean slate, unless anybody has any strong opinions on moving. No. I have a feeling we may need to come back to some of these conversations. But what I wanted to show here is, again, with these various types of leave, this is what is offered. So again, with the parental leave, what we had before was 80 hours per event. With the bereavement leave, so this would be after the loss of a family member, we had 16 hours. And then this is on a calendar year basis, so 2 days essentially. And then we could always use additional sick or administrative leave may be granted as well. So
Just a quick question on bereavement. Is it for any, is your bereavement defined by any of family connection, or is it, because I didn't get it. Did I see that?
I jumped over those slides a little bit here. I think
I'm
I
just
think
curious.
it's for
I know that you
close-
had to be, it like for my other employer, it was direct. It was a direct, it was, you know,
yeah, it is a direct.
yeah, it couldn't be like an aunt. It had to be.
No, I mean, I think it can be a family member, but I think it, you know, it was, yeah. And this is where, again, a little bit of that leniency comes into play in
Yeah.
regards to being sympathetic and
Yeah.
recognizing that. And that's when, you know, if we needed to add administrative leave or something like that, we could do that. So why don't I put here define further?
Yeah. It's very nice of you. I'm just curious. Did not have that at the last place. It's very, very specific as to what would account for bereavement leave.
Yeah, yeah. Compensatory time, the military leave, that's 120 hours or 15 days, and that's over the federal fiscal year. Civil leave, that's for if you get called in for jury duty, or if you're participating in, you know, you're being called up for being representation in the court system. There isn't any specific hours available for that, and it's certainly dependent upon the situation. The county also has a volunteer leave. So if you wanted to use 16 hours throughout the calendar year to work at the animal shelter, or do, you know, work at Food for Others, or do something else, that there are 16 hours that was available for that. Leave without pay, this would be more like taking a hiatus or going on sabbatical or something like that. That's up to a year that's offered. Education and professional development is a discretionary. So it's you know, if somebody is taking a class and it's directly supporting, you know, the work of the district, then it would be a leave category that would be available. Administrative leave and inclement weather and emergency leave. These are two that actually we already have policies on within our policy document. So I won't go through those right now. And Monica, if you want to take a look at those later, you can do that. The way that we've worked the maintenance of our annual sick and compensatory leave records are on our biweekly timesheets. I do inspect those every 2 weeks, just as part of our regular payroll, but it is, again, the responsibility of the employee to maintain those records and maintain their timesheets in a routine fashion. Requesting the use of leave. So it must be requested prior to taking the leave. And what I ask is that we at least have, it can just be submitted in an email, or oftentimes they call me and then I ask them, just please follow up with me in an email, but that it be the number of days prior to the amount of time that they would be wanting to take off. So if they wanted to take off a week, they would need a week in between in order to just kind of prepare and all. Usually the team gives me like a month. We've got a bunch of planners on our team, so it's usually pretty great. Unless an absence is approved by the executive director, an employee shall not be paid for any absences from scheduled work hours. Usually, if somebody doesn't show up, or if I don't hear from them, I'm reaching out to them as well. So just to let you know how I operate is, again, leading with positive intent. We've got such a good relationship among our team that if they're not reaching out to me first, then usually there's a concern. And that's the way that I approach it. Is everything okay? Unauthorized absences, employees absence from duty without approval shall receive no pay. Okay, so we've kind of talked about that already as well. Granting annual and sick leave, again, we've talked about this already, that we don't approve it in excess of what the amount the employee has at the beginning of the pay period in which the absence is occurring. So again, trying to make sure that we're not going to go into a debt. Sometimes that does happen, and in that case, usually again, I really want the employees to recognize that. It can be, well, anyway, so that they are planning ahead, and again, they have every ability to be able to forecast what their needs are, and then come to me. Laura, I see I'm probably going to be going in the hole about 4 hours. This is my plan on how to make it up. We can be that kind of flexible and accommodating so that they can still enjoy the use of whatever leave that they might have, and you know, again, just demonstrate that respect. This is our current process for crediting annual and sick leave, so that those that are less than 3 years receive 4 hours every pay period. 3 but less than 15 receive 6, and then 15 years or greater receive 8. And then everybody receives a standard 4 hours of sick leave per pay period as well. And then those that work under 80 hours receive a prorated rate. Let's see. Employees with less than 10 years of service may accumulate up to 240 hours per calendar year. Those with more than 10 years of service can accumulate up to 320 hours per calendar year. And then any of those limits get converted to sick leave at the end of the year.
Oh.
And they can accrue sick leave without any limit. So I was talking a little bit about overdrawn annual leave, and definitely this is the way that our team can debit it. Although usually I would prefer that the team use their compensatory leave first, and then draw down from their annual leave. In large part because we don't want to be going into the negative on annual leave, and so if they do overdraw, again, there has to be really good justification and some good planning on how they're going to be making up hours. Transferring annual or sick leave, we do have a process in place right now to be able to transfer annual or sick leave. And this is the steps. I'm not going to go through it in detail because it's a whole lot of little words and we're all tired. So, but I want you to know we do have a process in place. We have employed this process. It has worked well, and it's a good one. Essentially, if an employee is promoted, they take what leave they have with them. If they separate with us, we actually have a district-specific policy that we pay out only 160 hours of unused annual and compensatory leave. And again, this is in large part because we have it is a liability on our financial books as well, or something that we keep in consideration. Unused sick leave is not paid out. So we do have a policy question. FMLA, we do fall under the Family Medical Leave Act, and right now the county policy, and by virtue of that, which has been the district policy, is that an employee is eligible if they meet the following components: whether the employee has worked for the district for 12 months and whether the employee has worked at least 1,250 hours in the previous 12 months. So I want to kind of go back to the paid family leave, because there seems to be a little bit of disconnect. You might remember with the paid family leave, you can employ the FMLA at the same time as that, and you can use paid family leave while you're in your probationary period. This essentially would mean that they would receive that paid family leave, but they wouldn't fall under FMLA. So it is a little bit of a tricky spot. But I can say one of the things that NVRC did was they relaxed this requirement and this requirement so that an employee that had worked for NVRC for 6 months could be eligible for FMLA. So that's where we have some flexibility in being able to make a determination. And I guess the question is do we want to adjust any of those eligibility requirements? That may be a conversation for next time. So maybe we can think about it a little bit.
I have to think about that a little bit. And I'd rather, you know, you have a small staff, and it's also important to know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, my heart tells me, of course you can relax it. You know, it's fine. It's going to be great. My brain tells me I need to slow down and process this and think about this a little bit to ensure that we're being fair to what, you know, I don't.
Maybe what we want to do is we can come back and revisit this, and maybe what this relates to is what our probationary period is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely something else to make sure that yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry. I don't have a direct answer.
That's all right. I think we're at that point of the night where we've hit capacity. I know I have as well.
Yeah.
So maybe we call it a night for now.
Can
And
you resend this to me, because I know you've been doing it, Laura, and I think I'm missing a slide in the one that I had for some reason. So if you don't, yeah.
Yeah, I've made some adjustments since the one that I sent you, Monica, and that's what I really wanted to highlight tonight. And I will definitely send this out to you. I also need to convert this over to a Word document as well. But yeah, I think the leave policies are pretty standard, and I think we just need to decide. There's a couple of things that we need to decide. One, do we want to adopt the same types of leave that Fairfax County has provided? And to be honest, I think they're very generous. I think they're pretty good. I can't see anybody using all of those different types of leave within the same year. So I don't think that that's necessarily an issue. The other question is the paid family leave, if that's something that we want to adopt, or whether or not we want to do more for some of our employees as well, or less, is up to us. And then also maybe we put a pin in the conversation about FMLA and bring that back when we're looking at some of the other aspects of the personnel policies.
Yeah, I think the overlap between the different policies, I totally don't understand yet. Don't need to, don't try to explain, but I think we need to kind of get that straight at some point. When does one policy run concurrent with the other? Totally lost me when we went through that. So later, when we're awake.
Yep. Yeah.
Laura, what do any other districts do?
So it's very interesting. I would say definitely Fairfax County is quite a bit more generous than some of the other districts. Based upon what we have in the, there's a wide range. Based on what we had in the personnel management resource book, I can give you an example that they use, again, to just demonstrate the ranges. One district does not allow the accrual of leave until after their first year with the district. And then another district provides basically a leave budget up front. So they vary. And then there's others like us that accrue leave on a routine basis. The one interesting thing about ours is the other difference, I guess, in terms of that kind of accrual of leave is just the years of service related to the amount of leave earned. is just a little bit different. So there's a range. I've been pretty satisfied with ours. And in regards to some of the other leave types, again, the association's handbook really only had these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different options available. And they're pretty consistent. What they have in their book is consistent with what Fairfax County has, except for this one. Fairfax County is much more generous than what is recommended in the counties or in the association's book. But again, there's flexibility there.
Laura, something I'm going to be bringing up in all these policies going forward is agency. Who's responsible for implementing, enforcing the policies? And you know, on this one, I think once the policies are set, there might be some exceptions, but it seems to me that this could be delegated to the office manager. That you don't need to be spending your time overseeing a lot of this stuff. And Heather's going to have the data for most of it. My first point is, for each of these major sections of policies, one of the things we're lacking is agency. Who's responsible for it? Is it delegated or is it the board responsibility? And on this one, I think we can delegate it all. The question is who? Just think about it.
Well, and right now it's right. Okay.
If there's some things that are you instead of Heather or Heather instead of you, fine. But just in general, I think we need.
Yeah, Jerry, I think the purpose of this, though, is that we're working on the personnel for the executive director to ensure that she's got what, or he down the road, I'm not being sexist or discriminatory, but so that to make sure that they have a guidance for this, for the employees of the organization. So that we're not diving into at this time, I think, and I may be wrong, but I think the governance component dives into the whole roles and responsibilities. And right now we're just focused on the actual policy personnel. We're not, this isn't, at this time, it's about providing the personnel, the outline and the guidance and the policy for the executive director to execute in their capacity as executive director.
If we're going to be dealing with agency all in one place, that's fine. Agency governance, whichever one you call it, that's fine. Or it could be embedded in the various policies.
Well, a personnel document doesn't usually host a place for like the roles and the like. So when we go, yeah. Sorry.
Well, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Monica, but that was a big part of what we talked about last time. Was talking about sort of these authorities, and it was this one where we talk about it. So if the delegation, so again, and we do have a section here for the office manager. So Jerry, you're right. I mean, that's the reason why Heather's also participating in this conversation, is because she does play a role with implementation of a number of these policies, and that delegation in the past has come from me. And so as a support for the work of implementing our personnel policies. So that's definitely an important component to a lot of what we have with maintenance of the payroll records and things like that. So I think in terms of adjusting some of those duties and responsibilities, that's a bigger conversation worth having.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, we are heading on to 9:45 here, and it's way past all of our bedtimes.
That's my voice.
But I appreciate everybody's, contributions tonight. I mean, it's been a really good conversation, and I know that was a lot of information to go through, but I think they're really important in just sort of setting that foundation.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for everyone for their information and adding to the conversation and making sure we're capturing what can continue helping a successful district.
So, and just to let you know what my next steps are is I will send everybody a Word document with basically cutting and pasting, information from those PowerPoint slides, but I'll send you a Word document with what we discussed tonight so that you can review it when you've got a little bit more time as well. So thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good night. Stay safe in the ice.
I have
All right, you too.
one piece of news that you might have heard already, but I want to share with you. Randy Bartlett has declared that he's retiring.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yes, we just heard that tonight at the tree commission. And
Yeah, I was going to share that on Tuesday at the board meeting as part of my report. Yeah. Oh, you stole my thunder, Jerry. No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, he's retiring.
What?
He just got promoted to Public Works.
2 years. I thought it was 1 year. I was corrected. He's been in that position 2 years. So they told me it's
fast.
tree commission. So the succession, I'm sure, will be fraught with interest.
He has a bunch of good people.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has. I think the Public Works is still in a good spot, but I know he's been a fixture there for a long time. So yeah, it's sad. His last day is June 4th. So yeah, it'll be sad to see him go. It'll be a big sea change for sure.
Good night, all.
All right, at 9:48, I am going to end our recording. Thank you all.
Thank you.